Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraftman Fred McEnany. We are honoured to acknowledge Brigadier General Tan Chi Wee, Chief of Staff, Joint Staff and Inspector General of the Singapore Armed Forces, Vice Admiral David Johnston, Royal Australian Navy, Vice Chief of the Defence Force, and the accompanying delegation. We welcome the representatives from Navy Health also attending this evening's ceremony. We welcome the delegation from the National Museum of Australia Encounters Fellowship. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Hamilton North Public School, Broadmeadow, and from Queensland, St Agnes Primary School, Mount Gravatt, and Our Lady of Dola's Primary School, Mitchelton. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Albert Dew. Albert Dew, known as Bert, was born on the 10th of June 1896, the eldest son of Fred and Adelaide Dew of Burra, South Australia. Albert was born on the family property, Bluebell Farm, and he was educated at the local Burra school. After finishing school, he worked the farm with his father. He was known as a splendid horseman and was an enthusiastic member of the 23rd Barossa Light Horse Militia Unit. Although farming took too much of his time for him to play much sport, he won prizes in horse riding at the Burra Show and was a keen musician and a member of the Burra Orchestra. Albert was also an active member of the Coringa Methodist Church. Albert Dew enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in August 1916. Despite his experience in the light horse at home, he was posted to the 32nd Infantry Battalion, along with a number of his friends from Burra. He underwent a period of training in Australia before being sent overseas, completing his training in England. He finally reached the 32nd Battalion on the battlefields of the Western Front in February 1917. Dew proved an able soldier and within 6 months was promoted to Lance Corporal. He wrote many cheerful letters home, often reporting on having met many Burra boys in various places in France. In September 1917, the 32nd Battalion participated in the Battle of Polygon Wood, one of few Allied successes of that year, and Dew came through unscathed. One month later, however, he was wounded in the arm and evacuated to a hospital in Le Havre. He wrote home that the wound was only a slight one, a slight flesh wound above the elbow. After 5 days in hospital and what he described as a course of physical drill to stretch the sinews, he was able to return to active duty. In December 1917, the 32nd Battalion was on a train moving towards the town of Devra when a coupling between carriages broke. One of the passengers, Private Moritz Husenrodder, was on the train and described what happened when the uncoupled second half of the train caught up to and hit the first half. There were 6 carriages smashed like firewood. I shall never forget the sight. All those who were able got to work and helped to get the others out. It took half an hour to get them all out. Albert Dew later wrote that he much prefers shot and shell to an experience of that sort. In February 1918, Lance Corporal Dew received furlough to England. He was a few days late in returning to his battalion, and as a result, he was demoted to private. Shortly afterwards, he fell ill with tonsillitis and was away from the battalion for nearly a month, returning in mid-March 1918. On the 29th of July 1918, the 32nd Battalion attacked Germany positions near the French village of Molincourt. The operation was a success, with all objectives captured within 13 minutes. Throughout the night, the Germans dropped artillery and Minenwerfer shells on the new Australian front line, trying to disrupt the work of consolidation. As part of this work, Private Dew and another man had dug a new position in the forward lines. One of the German Minenwerfer rounds scored a direct hit on Dew and his mate as they occupied their new position, killing both instantly. Dew's platoon sergeant later wrote to his family saying, "Your son did his duty and he was a hero. His loss, no doubt, is great to you, and I feel for you. He is also a loss for me, for he was a splendid machine gunner." I must say that a finer soldier than your son would be hard to find. Bert's brother Bob deeply mourned his brother, writing, "Empty is your saddle, wild your saddle mare. I miss you from the stable, I miss you everywhere." Private Albert Jew's grave was lost in subsequent fighting, and today he is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretna. His family put memorial notices in the newspaper every year on the anniversary of his death well into the 1930s. One such notice read, "We often think of you, dear Bert, and think of how you died. The hardest part of all was we could not say goodbye." Albert Jew was 22 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph featuring Albert Jew seated is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Albert Jew, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses beating through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.